Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where I recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and today's the 17th of May, 2022. Alright everyone, let's get into it. Sorry, before we get into it, just excuse the mess behind me. I'm having some shutters installed tomorrow on my windows over here, so I had to move everything from over here on my left to kind of like behind me to get out of the way. There's a lot of stuff back there, just ignore that mess, that'll be gone by tomorrow. But anyway, on to kind of like what I wanted to talk about today. So, I put out this tweet today where I said, remember when we all thought DeFi tokens were going to be in the top 10? And I have that kind of like Wojak meme with a crying face in the background and a kind of like a mask of a smiling face on in my caricature, of course. But this was a very popular narrative back in the day that these DeFi tokens, YFI, Comp, Uni, there's so many of them now, right? There was Sushi. There were these kind of like narratives these popular narratives that these DeFi tokens would replace all of the dead coins, all of the zombie coins, all of the scams that exist in top 10, top 20, top 30, top 40, blah, 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 right? And you know what? I personally was one of those people that was very bullish on this. I had a pretty strong thesis that this would happen. I thought that, we would finally get some kind of like fundamentals-based kind of top 10. And sure enough, that didn't happen. DeFi tokens have been down only since DeFi summer against ETH. They never, none of them have actually reached their all-time high against ETH again. And I think, it's a function for a few different reasons. But I think what I wanted to focus on with this is that I spoke yesterday about how kind of like I went through my journey of how like I kind of invested in crypto over the years and kind of invested in the wrong things, sold at the wrong time, took 3 cycles to get to where I was, blah, 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 right? You guys listened yesterday. But what I wanted to focus on with this was that I think what happens in this industry a lot of the time and why so many people are just really bad investors is because people will take like 3 months of time. Like DeFi Summer was about 3-4 months of time in 2020. And they'll kind of extrapolate that out to a long-term thesis. So, and typically this will happen during bull markets. So, for example, if you take like 3 months of a bull market and say, okay, well, these 3 months, this thing has done really well. This project's doing awesomely. They're generating all this revenue. They're growing really quickly. I'm super bullish on this. I'm going to kind of like... be bullish on this for like the long term. I'm going to, stack a bag of this and be really bullish on it over the long term. And then, of course, what ends up happening is that the bull market made it kind of tricked people into thinking that this protocol or this project actually had product market fit, when in reality, it had kind of like bull market product market fit, right? It didn't have like, the ongoing kind of like fit there. And that's not to say kind of like any of these things have failed or anything like that. Like there is kind of like exceptions to this rule as well, such as Uniswap, for example. Like the Uni token against both USD and ETH has done quite poorly, but Uniswap has been growing. It's deployed on other chains. It's maintained its dominance and continued to kind of like increase its dominance over the AMM space. And it has some of the smartest people in this industry working on it, but its token is just not doing much. And there's a million different reasons why tokens kind of like go up and down and things like that. But I think that, extrapolating out certain kind of market conditions and forming a long-term thesis based on that is probably not the right way to go about things. We have plenty of evidence for that. And, it's funny that I say that because I think that it's kind of like these things go through hype cycles as well. So, for example, let's use ETH as the perfect example. ETH went through a pretty massive hype cycle in 2017, where it went from $10 to $1,400 in, I guess, like the first week of 2018, technically. And then it came down to $80 during 2018. And if you actually plot that ETH chart in linear against a lot of the charts of pretty much like every hype-driven token, they all look the same, right? They have like an initial kind of like, they're flat at the start, then they have like a little small run up, and the run gets kind of like more steep, and you kind of like have this chart that just goes straight up, but then obviously it kind of like peaks out, and then it comes straight back down and kind of levels out, and it might level out like above what it was like when it started, about the same level or below, right? And that's because a lot of these things are purely kind of like hype driven, especially during bull markets where their prices make absolutely no sense and they're only going up because there's such a liquidity injection into the crypto ecosystem, and that kind of like rises all boats for a relatively short period of time. And ETH went through that and then came back stronger. But the thing is, 99% of tokens during that era have not come back stronger, and they never reached their all-time highs against USD, let alone ETH again. So kind of like when I look at things like from that kind of like perspective and kind of like take I guess like take that kind of like longer term view, I mean, it makes sense that a lot of these things will never kind of like go back up, especially if they were only going up because it was a bull market. So, ETH, the thing is, ETH started going up, I think, in 2020, and it wasn't really a bull market yet. Like there was kind of like DeFi summer that happened, and kind of like ETH were, ETH was kind of like flat during that. The DeFi tokens went crazy, but ETH was relatively flat. But then ETH started going crazy from there and had its own bull market. So there was kind of like changing dynamics around that, but it was kind of like pretty crazy to see, right? Pretty interesting to see how it all played out. And the thesis of DeFi tokens kind of like climbing up the ranks, I think at this point in time is dead. Maybe it'll change in the future, but yeah, it was just such a kind of like I guess like a failed thesis that I figured that kind of I would discuss it today. And I wrote some more about this in the Daily Gwei Newsletter as well, if you want to kind of like check that out. And in my newsletter, actually, I'm just looking at it now, I actually made a point about the fact that I think what a lot of people miss with these DeFi tokens is that they're tied to businesses, right? And kind of like if they, like businesses being the products, the projects, the apps on chain, and if these apps are doing poorly, then the token has absolutely no reason to go up in value. Like that's the thing. Like as I was talking about the bull market masking the fact that these projects don't have actual product market fit, because they might be paying out token incentives, for example, and if their token's going up, they might be able to increase their TVL, but it's only because the token rewards that are being paid out is lucrative enough for that to happen. But a lot of them don't actually generate much revenue at all. A lot of them are actually at a loss because they're paying out for those kind of like incentives, and the token literally has zero reason to go up in that kind of scenario. And that's why a lot of them will just go down, trend down over the long term. A lot of them are, I was looking at some of the charts, like a lot of them are pretty wrecked. Like some of them are down 90+% against ETH, which is crazy, right? Like, as you guys know, I use ETH as a benchmark asset. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of like give a few thoughts on that there. And I think the main takeaway is that it's not just limited to DeFi tokens. Don't look at like the 3 months of like, the few months that we're having like a really crazy bull market where everything's going up in value. Don't form a thesis based on that, because it's not going to work. Like, especially for an asset that, has a really, really strong run in a bull market. There's no point forming a long-term thesis based on that, because there's no guarantee that it's going to be around even kind of like 6 months after the bull market kind of like subsides. The project may kind of like fail, the team might run out of money or anything like that, right? So there's a million reasons why projects fail. And I think if people keep extrapolating out kind of like the bull market to form a long-term thesis, they're going to end up holding something down like 90+%. And I did that from 2017. It's funny. There was a token called Aeon, and I've spoken about this before, that I bought. Like, I drank the Kool-Aid of Aeon in 2017. It was some interoperability project. I bought a decent chunk of it, and then there was some token reward scheme where you could lock up your tokens for a period of time and get more tokens. Maybe you could call it early yield farming. But it was called the TRS, the token release schedule, and I ended up getting a lot of tokens with that. But the thing is that Aeon really only went up in value because of the bull market. And since the bull market ended in 2017, it's been down only, and no one talks about Aeon at all anymore. And it's down like 99+% plus against USD, right? And I can't remember where I sold it exactly. I think I sold it when it was down 90%-ish or something like that. I sold it in chunks, but I held it down because I still kind of like believed in that project. I was still like, it's just the bear market. This project's going to be cool, but then it just faded into irrelevancy. So don't think that, that's kind of like a bad thing to do that either. I think it's a kind of like a lesson to be learned. But at the same time, I didn't put all of my money into Aeon, right? Like I still had majority of my funds in ETH, and then I had a few side bets here and there, and I cut pretty much like all of them through the bear market, which was a good idea in hindsight. But yeah, you have to kind of like live it, I think, to get to that point. But anyway, moving on from that for now, there's a bunch of other things to get through. All right, so Superphiz put out an interesting tweet yesterday saying, Ethereum isn't done. It has been in heavy development for 8 years, and it may continue in development for a very long time. Don't assume that you're looking at a finished product and feel frustrated with weaknesses. We're building for the future. So this is what I tried to kind of like get, I guess like a major point I try to get through to everyone when I'm kind of like educating about Ethereum, is that Ethereum in its current state, if you're judging Ethereum in its current state as if it's kind of like a finished product, that's kind of like the complete wrong way to look at things. Ethereum, for all intents and purposes, is still kind of like in a beta version, right? Or kind of like version 1. And I know that we had the ETH1 and ETH2 nomenclature before, but just generally, like Ethereum as it exists today is really a beta product, right? And that's because there are so many upgrades still coming to Ethereum, as a kind of like Superphiz alluded to here, to greatly improve it. And obviously, some of these upgrades are things like the merge and dank sharding, and all those other roadmap items that Vitalik has spoken about before. And those are not just small things. They're major parts of the Ethereum protocol. Like, the Ethereum protocol, in my mind, won't be finished for at least another 5-10 years, I would have to say. In terms of, and what I mean by finished is that kind of like, it's never going to, it might not ever be like 100% finished when like no changes are made to the base layer, or maybe it will be in like a few decades time or something like that. But I think that you get to a point where it's kind of like, well, you know, it's 90% done or 95% done. Let's make much slower changes to this. Maybe we'll do a change every 3 years instead of every 6 months. You know, a hard fork every 3 years instead of every 6 months, because the upgrades aren't, you know, critical. They're nice to haves. And kind of like when we reach that point, that's when we can say that Ethereum maybe isn't done, but like that's the vision, right? That is the original vision that we wanted to kind of like get towards. This is what Ethereum is, and it's servicing kind of like billions of users by that point with the layer 2s and everything like that. So that's why we say Ethereum isn't kind of like done, because as it exists today, like it's not. I mean, we all know it. Ethereum as it exists today can't scale to billions of users. It can't even scale to millions of users. Ethereum layer 1 at least, and Ethereum layer 2 can't either right now. But with all these upgrades coming, with all these roadmap items coming, we're going to get to that point. And the funny thing is, a lot of the... God, my camera keeps going out of focus. Sorry, guys. I think it's because I've got the stuff behind me, but I'm just going to leave it. I think the thing is that Ethereum, while Ethereum can't scale to millions of users or even hundreds of thousands of users because the fees just skyrocket, neither can a lot of these other chains, even if they've kind of like completely centralized themselves. Like, they all have their own issues. For example, BSC, the fees went up because it's just an Ethereum fork, right? Avalanche C-Chain, fees went up again. Solana fell over because it can't handle, bots kind of like coming on the network, and they're going to introduce a fee market to kind of like combat that, which is ironic, but I've discussed that before. I won't go into that. But basically, anything that you look at today can't handle that many users. So nothing is finished. Nothing is done. Everything has to improve, orders of magnitude from here to get us to where we want to be, which is mass adoption. And those improvements are going to come in different flavors. You're going to have layer 1 improvements, layer 2 improvements, side chains that even exist. Like, people sometimes say, oh, side chains are going to be completely obsoleted very soon. It's like, no, I don't think so, guys, because there are certain use cases that don't require Ethereum level security, but can still interact with Ethereum, can still kind of like work with Ethereum, and can still do things like posting a proof of their transactions to Ethereum and then having their data stored off chain, right? Like a Validium, for example. And I think those things are definitely going to exist and keep existing for a long time. So scaling is going to come in all forms, in all kind of like shapes and sizes. Because Ethereum layer 1 and Ethereum layer 2, probably, I mean, as bullish as I am on both of those things, they're not going to be ready for mass adoption for quite a while still. Like, the thing is that there's this debate right now, not right now, but just generally, it's like what should be on-chain versus what shouldn't be on-chain. There are some people that think that everything should be on-chain. Like, so just to give an example here, say you're playing like a game of chess on-chain, should every move be recorded as a transaction on-chain? Well, no, it shouldn't be recorded on layer 1 Ethereum as a transaction on-chain, because that just doesn't make any sense, right? Maybe even not on a layer 2, but what about like a side chain? What about something like a Validium or something like an Arbitrum kind of any trust chain or a Polygon Supernet, right? Maybe it does, right? Maybe it can be on chain in that, because they're obviously much more centralized in Ethereum and much less secure, but it's a chess move, right? Like, it's not like it's it's kind of like this high value financial transactions. So I guess like taking that view as well, you could still store the result of that chess game as a proof on Ethereum layer 1 if you wanted to, right? So there are different hybrid ways to scale. And I think that's kind of like the pragmatic approach to scaling crypto in general, not just Ethereum. And I think that we shouldn't be so tribal within the Ethereum ecosystem either around different scaling solutions. Like, the tribalism is always funny to me, because it seems to always come back to, how does this technology or how does this product benefit ETH, the asset? And honestly, guys, like, I think that the more adoption we get in crypto generally is going to benefit ETH, the asset, even if the adoption doesn't happen directly on Ethereum layer 1 or even at layer 2, because the pie just gets so much bigger. The pie is so small right now, so small. Like, I think at peak, during the peak of the bull market, MetaMask had 15 million monthly active users. And that includes not just Ethereum layer 1, it includes Ethereum layer 2, but also the EVM chains, such as BSC, Avalanche, Phantom, all those chains, right? They all accounted for that. So 15 million monthly active users, not daily, monthly active users at the peak of that bull market is nothing. Guys, there are 8 billion people on the planet, right? And the thing is that I would wager that that's a lot less now, given how quiet the market is. Like, it's probably only in a few million at best. And even then, I mean, it probably even less than that. If you look at the prices as like a proxy, it could be down as much as 90%. That could be like 2 million or something monthly active users that we currently have left. So that's nothing. We are still so bloody early, and it's good and bad. I mean, it's good because it gives us a bit more time to build. It's bad. I mean, depending on where you fall here, it's bad maybe because like we would have expected to have more adoption by now. But the industry is still young. As I've said before on the refuel, I think that the industry really started getting like actual proper on-chain adoption in 2017. I think up until that point, like even with the Bitcoin kind of like manias that happened in the past, there wasn't really much going on. I think 2017 is where kind of like you had the kickstart of like the on-chain users and things like that with Ethereum. And then since then, it's kind of like been growing, especially during kind of like the hotter periods of the market. And if you kind of take that, well, then it's really only 5 years old, the industry, I guess. Like if you want to take, and even if you want to go back as far as 15, 7 years old, so to speak, right? 2015 when Ethereum kind of like went online. But I mean, you can take it from anywhere. I don't think you should take it from when Bitcoin came out in 2009. It just doesn't seem like the first 3, even 4 years of Bitcoin was kind of like muted. I mean, really the only use case was Silk Road, and there wasn't that many people using it in the grand scheme of things. So I think that taking it from maybe when Ethereum came online and when we can do more stuff on chain is probably the better way to look at things there. But anyway, interesting tweet from Superphiz that kind of like prompted me to talk about all this stuff. And you know, maybe you guys have different opinions to me. As I said, you can always bring that up with me in the Discord channel. Always happy to have a conversation in there with everyone. All right, so Coinbase had a big announcement today that they shared here, and they titled this post, Access Web3 with the Coinbase app. And the TLDR is that the post highlights the ability to access and explore Web3 directly from the Coinbase app, powered by the new dApp wallet and dApp browser. So you can use it popular Ethereum dApps with Coinbase's new wallet here, which is really, really cool. This is kind of basically Coinbase acting as a neobank for different projects on Ethereum. So you can see here in this GIF, you load up your kind of like wallet, you kind of load up these apps, agree to some terms, and then you get started, right? You can see all the apps that are kind of like listed here, such as Uniswap, OpenSea Curve, all the popular ones. And then you can kind of like interact with it directly using the Coinbase app. And as I was just talking about when it comes to mass adoption, there's kind of like 2 major parts to it in my eyes. There's the kind of part where we need scale, obviously, like everyone knows that. But then there's the part where we need UI and UX to get vastly better. And I think Coinbase is doing a kick-ass job here. Like, you guys know I've been pretty critical of Coinbase in the past for various different decisions that they've made. But the one thing they do really well, I think, is a nice user experience. And that's why they're one of the top exchanges in the US, I think, is that they make it super easy just to buy crypto. You know, for all their faults, they do that really, really well. And I've always liked the Coinbase kind of like app, the mobile app. It's actually pretty smooth and pretty nice. And now the fact that you can kind of like access all these apps, all these dApps using the mobile wallet app is really cool. So kudos to Coinbase for this. I think this is the kind of stuff that's going to onboard, you know, even more users than anything else could at the end of the day. Maybe we get to a point where we finally flip this industry on its head, and instead of like relying on bull markets to bring in new users, we just get new users because the products are that good. It doesn't matter if it's bull or bear market. The products are good enough to bring in those users. I'm hoping we get to that eventually. We'll have to see how it plays out. But yeah, very, very nice release here from Coinbase today. So Cloudflare announced that they have started experimenting with Ethereum proof of stake. So I think they're going to be running, from what I understand here, I think they're going to be kind of like running their own validators. I think Tim Byko kind of like asked about that. They're getting their feet wet right now, and they'll be using Cloudflare's own assets to do this. So for those of you who don't know, Cloudflare is a massive Web 2 kind of like, I guess for they do a bunch of different things, but kind of like, you know, a lot of you may have seen them. They do like DDoS protection. That's a consumer facing thing where you're loading up a website and then it says like protected by Cloudflare, and it's like checking to make sure you're not a bot or you're not trying to DDoS the website. Cloudflare does that, but they do a bunch of other kind of like internet related services and kind of networking related services, I should say. So obviously, Ethereum is right up their alley here, and it's really cool to see them publicly announce that Cloudflare itself is going to be kind of contributing to Ethereum even more than they already have. They've kind of like announced, previous things like the Ethereum gateway and kind of like working with IPFS and stuff like that. But now it seems like they want to kind of like get involved with Ethereum proof of stake, which is very, very cool. This is not going to be the kind of like first or last company that does this, guys. Like, I feel like there's going to be so many of these companies that are going to be running validators for Ethereum, which is going to be super cool. Like, I know stake centralization has been a big topic of discussion recently, but I think, as I've said before, I have two kind of like main points around that. I think once withdrawals are enabled for stake, we're going to have like a great reshuffling of stake. But kind of like, secondly, as we go on, as I've said before, the business opportunity for either creating staking services or just staking in general is so big, especially post-merge, where the yields are looking like they're going to be 7 or 8%. There's going to be a lot of people staking. There's going to be a lot of businesses built up around it. There's going to be, and then post-withdrawals, there's going to be a lot of businesses that kind of like maybe do marketing campaigns and say, hey, you should switch your stake from this pool or this platform and you should come stake with us, right? They can't do that right now because obviously you can't I guess like change where you're staking. They can do marketing around, if you've got ETH, you should stake it sort of thing, and they do that. But in terms of like changing providers, you can't do that right now. You're locked in as soon as kind of like you stake. Even with the liquid tokens, like just because you sell your ST ETH doesn't mean that ETH isn't staked with Lido, for example, anymore. Yes, you could go buy, you could sell your ST ETH for ETH and then go stake with someone else if you wanted to. But it's kind of like a different thing there, right? So I think kind of like from that perspective, the way I kind of like view this thing is that there's going to be lots of these companies staking ETH. They're going to lead to more decentralization and distribution of the stake. And post withdrawals, there's going to be a lot of companies vying for the kind of like stake from different parties out there. So I think taking all that into account is going to be very important. And I think that we should all be focused on kind of like paying attention to this sort of stuff and encouraging these companies to do it. I think it's very, very important. All right, so some big news out of Polygon today. So, I guess like a teaser of big news. So, Polygon, in partnership with EY, is launching the first ever L2 ZK live on mainnet, Polygon Nightfall, as you guys have known about. Now, Polygon Nightfall, I think I've discussed this before, but I think it came out all the way back in 2018. Then they joined Polygon recently, and now Polygon is going to be doing a live stream today at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time, talking about this kind of like L2 ZK being live on mainnet, which is very, very cool to see. I mean, not much to say here besides kind of like tune into the live stream, and I'll definitely recap this tomorrow on the Refuel and see kind of like what all the fuss is about, but very cool to see this out of Polygon. So Fredrik here shared a blog post today called Secured Number 4 Bug Bounty Rewards for Ethereum Core Protocol Development. So you can see here that there's been a massive bump in the rewards paid out to bug hunters or kind of like people that kind of like find bugs on Ethereum mainnet. You can get a reward of up to $250,000 and double to $500,000 for mainnet targeted upgrades that are live on public testnets. So for example, if you find a bug in kind of like the Ropsten testnet after it goes to the merge transition, you could earn up to $500,000 for bug, depending on the severity here. This is really a really big deal, I think. The kind of Ethereum Foundation has come under a bit of, I guess, like scrutiny before from people saying, the bug bounty is too low, it should be much higher. Well, here it is. Like, this is $500,000 that's up for grabs if you're able to find a critical bug. And so it should be, because if a critical bug in a kind of like Ethereum mainnet targeted kind of like upgrades are found, well, I mean, if that made it to mainnet without being found, that could lead to a massive loss of funds for users, right? So definitely cool to see a massive kind of like bump here in the bug bounty rewards. If you are a bug hunter, definitely go check out this blog post for more details. All right, so Eric Connor shared an interesting little tweet thread today about kind of like screenshots of the first Ethereum newsletters. So this newsletter issue went out on the 10th of February 2014, I think. The 10th of February 2014? Yeah, I think so. I think he's because okay. The reason why I'm getting trumped up here, guys, is because the Australian date format is day, month, year. The American date format is month, day, year, which it's always puzzled me, but that's the kind of like way it is there. So I don't know if this is the 2nd of October 2014 or the 10th of February 2014. I don't know. Either way, it was in 2014. It should be the 10th of February since Eric is American. But yeah, anyway, let's focus on the content. The newsletter itself is pretty cool. It's funny. It's very, very short, right? This is talking about kind of like the testnet, the Ether pre-sale. Okay, the Ether pre-sale hadn't happened yet, so this is the 10th of February, not the 2nd of August. So I was talking about the testnet, the ETH pre-sale coming up, the testnet client. So this is testnet clients for like Ethereum, like Genesis, right? And kind of like details on the pre-sale, and then Eric kind of like shares some more. So you got the 3rd of March here. In 2014, another Ethereum newsletter, and then a third one here, I think from the 3rd of July, 2014, talking about kind of like Ether, and Ethereum mainnet went live 31st of July 2015, and then the Ether sale started in around this time in kind of like 2014. So yeah, just cool to see some history here from Eric. He'd been around since day one. Like I always say to him, like, dude, I wish I was around since day one like you were. Like, it's just crazy that kind of like he's been in it for so long. But yeah, really, really cool to see these kind of like original kind of like emails here. So thanks to Eric for sharing this. All right, so Slingshot announced their mobile app today. So you can reserve your spot on the waitlist by going to slingshot.finance.mobile/mobile and earn an NFT plus BTC rewards. So you can go to this link. It'll be linked in the YouTube description to sign up on kind of like the waitlist. And then if you kind of like share a referral link, you'll get bumped up the waitlist. Now, I shared my referral link on Twitter today. Some people kind of like were like, "Has your account been hacked?" And I was like, "No, guys." Like, I kind of like captioned it saying that if I make any money from this, it's going to be donated to public good. So I kind of like did it as an experiment. I was like, okay, well, let's share this referral link. People are going to probably make fun of me, but I'll do it anyway. And then any kind of like money that I make from it, I want to donate to public goods. And I'll probably just send it to the Protocol Guild. That seems to be the easiest way to donate to public goods these days, besides the Gitcoin grants matching rounds, of course. But yeah, anyway, sign up on the kind of like wait list here if you're using Slingshot. If not, maybe you want to start using it. So definitely go give this a sign up. All right, so for those of you who have been in the ecosystem for a while, you'll know that Eric Connor and I have been doing a podcast for a long time now, 3.5 years, since the end of 2018, and that's part of EthHub. So it's called the Into the Ether podcast. A lot of you, I'm sure, have been listening to it and still listen to it. Over the past few months, we've been quite kind of like, I don't know if it was slack, but kind of like very hard to schedule, kind of like recording podcast. And we did our first one kind of like in 4 weeks yesterday, and it should be coming out today. I guess like today, technically we did it, and it should be coming out today for you guys, based in kind of like the US and stuff. But essentially we changed up the format. So usually in these podcasts, there were like weekly recasts where we'd go through the news of the week and talk about things that, the major things that had happened. But we kind of like figured that there was enough people doing that at this stage. I mean, obviously I'm doing it with the Refuel every day, that we don't need to do that anymore. So we changed the format up to be kind of like no more structured news updates, but just like casual back and forth conversation with me and Eric about kind of like Ethereum and about crypto in general, and like the past kind of like weeks worth of kind of like big events. And, if I had to say what it's similar to, it's probably similar to the live streams I do with David Hoffman, where we just kind of like have a back and forth, no real agenda or anything like that, just talking about the biggest themes. And honestly, like, it was super fun. This is the first time Eric and I had changed up the podcast in 3.5 years, and it was refreshing for us. It was really fun. It felt really, really great, and I can't wait for you guys to listen to it. If you do listen to the podcast, it'll pop up in your feed if you're subscribed, but if not, definitely give a listen to it, because Eric's got a lot of great insights. He's been, as I said, he's been in the ecosystem longer than I have, and he brings a different perspective. So definitely, recommend checking that out if you aren't a subscriber yet. But I think on that note, that's going to be it for today. So thank everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Thanks, everyone.